Sorry, Lori. He's taking great notes, though.
All right. So for the record, we are switching item number 10 and number 9. So we'll address the resolution before we address the land use appeal. There's been no changes or corrections to the city council minutes for January 3rd. We have a motion on the table by Councilor Kendall, Councilor Sheldon, seconded by Councilor Gage. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, motion carried.
Thank you for this. Yep.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, when you do speak this evening, if you do, please definitely bring your mic closer so that we can capture the audio. When Lori returns from vacation, she will be counting on that audio for exact minutes, etc. So thank you, I appreciate that. Item number 6 on our agenda is the nomination and election for council president for 2023. And thank you, Councilor Smith, for bringing that to our attention at our last minute meeting. Really appreciate that. So at this time, I am open to any nominations on the floor for council president. I nominate Russ Sheldon. Are there any other nominations on the board? Councilor Sheldon, are you up for the task this year?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion on the table by Councilor Smith, seconded by Councilor Page to nominate Councilor Sheldon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right. Thank you, sir. Item 7 is our public comment. This is the time that we encourage those wishing to comment to do so now during this time. We do have a few folks in Jesse Mays. If anyone in Jesse Mays is wanting to speak on something not on the agenda, we ask that you fill out a card and come up to the podium. All right, let the record show no one will be responding to that. In addition, I want to ask, do we have any public comment via email received prior to the meeting?
No, Mayor, we've not received anything on a regular meeting.
Okay, and then I'm based on the screen, I'm assuming no one's online for public comment.
Don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. Tonight is our staff report night, and first up is Robin.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors and members of the public. I am so pleased to see the results of our community survey and the amount of their approval that I see for the library in there. That was really great to see. I provided you with some numbers of our 2022 year, some data from the usage of the library in 2022 for you. And I would say that we are approaching our pre-pandemic checkout numbers, while our visits to the library remain a bit lower than they were before. And we'll keep watching that trend. Some people discovered online use of the library and digital library materials, and maybe using our services that way. And we certainly increase our outreach to the schools and senior center. So the number of people who are engaging via programs and outreach and so forth are more than triple what they were before, for example. So those are just a few highlights of our year-end summary. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Councilor Hindle and then Councilor Smith.
Yes, Robin, how does the when you install the online or
Yeah.
how does that work? Is that easier, and does accommodate a whole lot more of that?
Well, if someone is registered to North Plains and has a North Plains library card, when they use it's the Libby app through, WCPLS, Washington County Library, Cooperative Library Services. They can check out books to read in a downloadable print version or an audio version. There's some accessibility factors to those. For example, the print, they can make it any size they need to. So some people need like a larger print. And then audio is also helpful for people with lower vision or maybe low capacity. And so, there's definitely some benefits to the digital that people may have discovered.
This comment, I stopped by somebody's house and they were listening to a book. I couldn't believe how fast they were talking and the other.
You can adjust the speed, so some people listen to the books faster.
Right,
than
yeah.
you can.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
March is coming.
Yes, we're having Pi Day.
Okay.
Maybe you're gonna have, yes, Carol is in contact with the Pi Guy and, we are excited to have, Pi Day. I don't have a confirmation from the Pi Guy yet, but I'm hoping.
I'm not sure this is the library, but the library does a lot of action. Is there something that will pass it up, more people
So generally AARP has services offered through the senior center. I'm hoping that will resume this year. It has been on hiatus the last few years for those appointments, so I'm waiting to hear. At the library itself, we can print all the forms, make copies of the forms for people. We can, help people log into the IRS.gov site. We put the links right on the desktop of our public computers. So, but we don't offer the tax assistance at the library. Hopefully AARP will offer it at the senior center this year, and we can refer people there to make something.
I think they were doing something on last year.
Oh, they did do appointment on the last year. Yeah, but yeah, we do offer much supporting.
Dr. Martinez, do you have any questions or comments for, okay? Anyone else?
Thank you, everybody.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Next up is Chief Paxton.
Hey, good evening. This staff report has a little bit longer. It's got not only does it have December, but it's got a quarterly, and it's got the kind of the year-end wrap-up. So for December, North Plains officers responded or self-initiated 282 calls. Again, the vast majority of those are self-initiated. There's no real recurring trends. And as for overtime for December, we had 90 hours of overtime that we used for the overnight coverage. That's the highest that it's been since we started in February. And I really believe that a lot of that has to do with we're getting the same deputies on the same shifts signing up for it for the most part. So I think that's really good. And that's a total of 597 hours since we've started. And again, that's in February. So as for the public demand calls for December, we're right in the means. We're kind of right in the average there. And then as you transition down to the overtime, again, that graph there just shows kind of how it's compared with for the year for every month. And then as you guys wanted for December, it looks like we had 36 self-initiated activities that the deputies did. And it's got kind of a breakdown. Again, the vast majority of those are extra patrols, followed by traffic stops and suspicious vehicles. I also added in there the public demand calls. Those are the 5 public demand calls that we had in December that they responded to, and those are there in that should be there in your handout. Pretty much there's a couple of one of each. And then as you transit, well, I guess first off, are there any questions with that?
Thanks.
I have two questions. Number one, well, actually I have one question and one thing. December has 90 hours. Overtime hours are kind of all. Is it as signed up as most people want? Or is it, you know, a fixed limit of hours that we have available?
I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying. Could you ask that one more time, please?
90 hours. Overtime is very expensive. So I was wondering, do we have an open-end policy, people decide how much they want? We have it at 90 hours, and if it fills, it fills, if it doesn't, how's that time working for overtime? How do we determine how many hours are going to be scheduled?
Okay, so, back in February, when we first started doing the overtime, I want to say Andy allocated, the police department to do like, I want to say it was 21 hours a week. And I divided that amongst, 3 and 4 hours. Again, I had Friday and Saturday nights, with like 8 hours each night, and then I added 6 hours. So I kept it under the 20 hours a week, rotating that. So each week, we were getting a Friday and Saturday night at basically 8 hours, 7 or 8 hours, and then 6 hours on a rotating day each week. So again, like I said, it's been the same people wanting to sign up. The vast majority of it for those months that they weren't being signed up. So there's a lot of nights that were not being used. I think what's happened is, again, those deputies that realize that they can do it and it works with their shift, they've been doing on a regular basis. So that's how we've been getting the 90 hours. We are still not using the total hours that's been allocated, but we're getting much closer to it. Like I said, in December, that was much closer. So I don't think we'll get much more above 90. But again, those are all the hours that were budgeted by the city at the very beginning. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. The hours in the 20 hours a week, times 4 or 5, so it's 80. Thanks. Most of it's like, thank you for being responsive and adding the extra charts for us. The heat map shows what happening we're at, and also the what Georgetown is doing. How's that?
I'm really sorry. I don't know if there's a question in there.
There wasn't. The first one was a question, the second one was a statement. The statement was saying, thank you for adding the extra data.
You're welcome.
Takes a concept.
So I'll go on to the quarterly. And again, this is for the end of the quarter here. Again, we're public demand calls for the quarter, for the fourth quarter are down. Again, it's still kind of within the means, but it's a little bit less. And the self-initiated is way above. So it's and that's to be expected because again, that's some of the overnight coverage hours that we've been using as well. And then that's the fourth quarter heat map, just kind of where things have been happening. You can peruse that. And then kind of the end of year wrap up. We're looking at, public demand calls for the year, 857, with a self-initiated of just over 2,000. Again, we basically almost, well, not quite doubled, but we're quite a bit higher in the self-initiated, again, to be expected. And we're kind of within that means. We're still right in the means with our public demands. And then there's the heat map, kind of where things have been happening for the year. I don't know if you guys have any questions with that.
Chief, thanks for the detail in the summary form. I echo the sentiment of Councilor Page in regards to providing that information.
Very welcome.
And I do have a question. I don't think you can answer it. And it's not that important, but I'm thinking of 597 hours, we got about just shy of 90 grand in overtime expense. Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Kendall.
Yeah, Chief, I'd like to, on that last, where you got the self-initiated for the year 2000. Is that right? I'm not confused. Find it.
Yes,
In 2009, self-initiated versus 1,000, 1,200 for the last 3 years. So that shows that our fellows and gals out there are doing their job. They're doing things, checking things. I like that, if it's not right around the car, it's easy, not doing things. I like that.
thank you.
Counselor Smith has a question.
It's a quick one. I noticed on next door that there were some comments made, if you are checking the around Circle Park. If people are actually stopping, so I think some of the residents are really noticing that. That's it.
Did I hear you correctly that people are actually starting to stop around the Circle Park? You can, if that's the case, you could thank Conway. She's been hammering that pretty good. That's been her go-to as of late.
Kudos to the PD this month. Obviously, just getting out into the visibility, people are seeing and noticing and commenting. So kudos to you and the department. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I've got the last thing I had on here was, I don't know if it's been common knowledge yet, but congratulations to Deputy Conway. She's getting promoted to detectives in March. So she'll be leaving us. When she leaves, we've already done the selection process, and some of you may be pleased that Deputy Schutz will be coming back to North Plains. So I guess he'll be the new deputy in North Plains, but that'll be nice.
You all get that. Okay, awesome. All right. And she coming again, when is she moving on? What, in March or February?
Yeah, it'll be the beginning of March.
Beginning of March.
It's whatever that the first pay period, first full pay period in March is when she goes. I want to say it's like March 4th or March 5th. So it's super good for her. She's I know she's been wanting it for a long time, and I think it'll be really terrific for her to get to go upstairs.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Dr. Martinez? All right. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and sign off if no one has anything else. I've got Vegas is calling my name.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
He's there for a training, so, yeah. Mhm.
Let's see, we've got the community development monthly report. Any questions regarding the land use applications?
Steve, could you provide us with an update on the garbage recycling application, if anything has been updated?
Yes, absolutely. Right now it is in the incomplete stage, so we mailed out a letter to them. I think this is the second week, so they've had it for about 2 weeks now. And there weren't any major items missing, just some minor stuff that we requested. One in particular, when they did their analysis on their left turn lane for Northwest West Union Road, they did not use the ASHTO standards. They actually used some standards from a Texas transportation manual. And so we asked them to go back and redo that analysis using our ASHTO standards, which is required by the county for their road. So they're doing that. There are some other just very minor things, just technical submittal type stuff. I can't recall it off the top of my head, but those things should really take them no time at all. So I think what the delay is in terms of getting the information back is just performing this additional study right now. And then they'll get that turned back in and assuming that they have everything that we asked for, we'll deem it complete and then we'll send out notice to the neighborhood. And that will kind of be the kickoff for, once we deem it complete, we're effectively on the 120-day clock at that time. So, everything starts to really move a little bit quicker at that point.
And is there a traffic pattern coming off of the Jackson School to West Union or Glencoe to West Union for the truck traffic?
They're analyzing both directions. Yeah, so the turn lane that they're analyzing in this particular situation is a left turn for vehicles heading east on Northwest West Union to turn into, I think it would be 292nd. And so that's what they're analyzing right now. Is there a need for a turn lane there with the traffic that's coming from this particular development? And as you probably know, the development is more than just West Union, more than just far west. It's also for the spec warehouse. So both of those applications are being reviewed concurrently. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, moving on to the finance department, monthly report. Bill?
Thank you, Mayor. I will try to do my best not to get into the details in the interest of time. So if you have any questions about anything, please, I'm happy to field things. One correction, actually two things. Number one, I misstate in the report that we planned to bring a supplemental budget to you in January. That is not going to happen with all of the levy work, among other things. So Andy and I are discussing that in February at the earliest, but we will be coming back with a supplemental budget for you to hear and consider. Really the only clear and obvious category of expenditure, at least in the general fund, overwhelmingly, our expenditures relative to budget, we're still doing well. Relative to budget still, the one category that looks like it will need to have supplemental with near certainty would be materials and services in the community development department, and that's largely UGB related stuff. So almost an impossible project process to budget for, but just to be, being incrementally careful about it, but the process has been what it has been. So in the general fund, that's kind of the highlight story there, I would say, of what we continue to track. Streets fund and water fund continue to be doing well relative to budget. So I don't really have any big stories there. Overdue water accounts. We had a major pay down among nearly last month. I came and said the HOAs and Bryn Hill individual lots had gone over 30 days overdue. During December, the vast majority of all that was paid down. So we're in a much better situation. One set of accounts by one of the homeowners associations that were overdue at the end of November did not get paid down and went into the 60-day and over category. Not really sure what's going on there. We do expect payment of that overdue balance, but that's, I believe, over $3,000 alone. But everything else that was overdue by the HOAs and for individual Bryn Hill lots were paid down in November. So it's just kind of a weird thing we've never seen from them. So that's kind of the story with overdue accounts on the water fund. Otherwise, we have no balances over 120 days. $3.73 overdue in over 90 days. We're doing really well in the very overdue categories. We just kind of have a weird situation with an HOA. So we're working on that. Any questions specifically about any of that? Okay. And then let's see. Other highlights, Councilor Papen. We were 85% of budget with the fuel tax for the calendar year of 2020.
It's like you.
Well, when you're asked the same question by the same person every month for a few months, I even finally get it, right? So we got that in there, just so you can see it specifically. Frankly, one of the things I'm excited about Taco Bell opening is I look forward to seeing what the fuel tax receipts are moving forward, because They will be advertising as a new Taco Bell location in North Plains, and we should see more people who may not come to North Plains stopping. Because they like Taco Bell, and maybe some of those folks will buy gas. So let's see what happens. I expect maybe, hopefully some kind of bump. But we'll track that and see what the effect is. So it's not a bad thing for Gunco and for the gas stations. As we were discussing the police levy, I got confirmation the auditors mailed the final 2017 URA audit. It is now complete. And I got a schedule for the FY21 audit from them earlier today as well. So they have long process to deal with too. Any other big highlights? I don't believe so. On the finance side of things, there's an update of property tax revenue. We're a good bit over last year, and for the biennium, we're pretty darn close to forecast. So we're in good shape there as well. So I'll stand for any questions. In addition,
Talk about, and then the travelers. Are they going to do the sign? Information sign you talked about?
On Highway 26?
Yeah.
They would do that through ODOT, so I can help them, sure.
Correct.
Yeah. But they're still working for their own signs. Steve's going through all that. They have a lot of signs still to put up. I'm sure if folks were there for the grand opening, you saw that was a hasty opening, so they have a lot of stuff left to do, but signs will be one of them. I would sort of anticipate seeing one on the highway at some point, so.
That's always helpful when people. For Taco Bell or something.
Speaking of signs, I actually had a conversation with, the GM on Saturday about signage. And he was actually inquiring about showing signage with the Shell gas station. The rented space on the other side, and I thought that was an interesting question, because something I had not heard, and I'm not familiar with, even if our code. If there's anything that speaks to that in our code, but you might just have a heads up, they might be reaching out to you and talking to you about that.
I appreciate that heads up. As a matter of fact, one of the things that staff is working on with planning commission is taking a deep dive into the sign code to see if there might be changes that are needed at this time. And so we went through the definition section at the last meeting, and you would think we would get through that pretty quick, but there's a lot of stuff there that needed to be considered. And so that took about an hour and a half just getting through the definitions. And now we're going to go through the various zoning districts at the next meeting. So the timing's great. I think we're going to probably move forward with some type of text amendment to the sign code, and we will notice the commercial property owners and the industrial property owners is the ones who are most affected, obviously. And so hopefully they'll engage and share their thoughts with us.
Any other questions? Comments?
And more PRs and things and PRs and percent. And maybe we just clear that out.
at the end of the fiscal year, Council Page probably, if we don't see it.
That's right.
Mhm. Most likely, if they don't.
All right, so now we're on to, our resolution this evening. It is resolution 2215, the public works building contract amendment. With process design. And. Andy, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll give a brief overview of staff report, and then I invited Process to come and talk about the process. So Jason's here, and Nick, hey Nick, as well. So we're making some good progress on the building. So as you know, towards the end of last year, we got a presentation on the schematic design. At that time, we talked about some of the building elevations, interior partitioning and layouts, really got into some, I guess, 30,000 foot details on kind of what the inside of the bay doors and everything would look like, added a second story, various site plan concepts. or site plan layouts, and then some of the initial MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing needs, as well as some of the structural information related to that, to mass timber approach. So we process architecture work on that, and they coordinated with the subs on the different engineering needs. And we're also working with 3J on the civil and landscape needs too. I asked them to give us a proposal for taking this design all the way through bidding and construction administration. So that would be design development, working with the contractor on the construction manager, general contractor, CMGC approach. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Construction documents, and then finally moving on to bidding, coordinating the bidding, and doing the construction administration through the work. They submitted that. You've got the proposal there and the fee proposal included in there. All in all, I consider it to be reasonable by adding a second story, by adding in some inflation from when we first originally had this building conceived in the $5 million grant from a couple of years ago. We're looking at $5.5 to $5.8 million building. This would represent about 7.3% of the soft costs to take this through with the construction admin. At this time, Jason, do you want to, you can chat. Yeah, if you want to do there, sure. You can take that. Jason joined us, well, a couple times, and then the most recent time was back in December, right? And you talked about some of the schematic design. Okay. So he's going to go over a little bit about our updated schedule as well. I got some stuff all over the place. Get out of the way here. Okay. An AV person in the budget in my future. I'm kidding. All right, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, and so this is just another photo of Christmas rendering of kind of, I think, what we had presented back in November now. If you go to the next slide, maybe it's the updated schedule. So one of the things that we talked about, I think on December 17th or 18th, when the meeting was, we proposed going with the CMGC process, construction manager, general contractor process, which is helpful for a project like this, as opposed to what would be called the traditional design and build process. What that does is it saves money, it saves a little bit of schedule with the bidding process. And it also allows the contractor to start pre-construction services a lot sooner. So you can see that yellow under the CMGC, that really light yellow. Once that contractor would be on board, they would actually be working with us. We would be doing construction coordination with our consultant team, as well as our team as well, talking with the contractor. One of the biggest drivers in something like this is the procurement process. So, there's some lingering effects from COVID still with supply chain, particularly around electrical gear. So we already know those things. So we're trying to mitigate some of the known elements with that strategy. So it is a little bit different, I think, than maybe how the water storage tank process was, but this is a pretty common. It's becoming much more common too, but this is a pretty common procurement process for construction. But the schedule where we have here, it tends to some of those orange boxes on the top. 3J was also doing planning. They are in the midst right now. I think they just had the neighborhood meeting surrounding this project.
Yeah, Steve did a few weeks, a month or two ago. Yep.
In December.
Yep.
In December.
Okay. Yep. So they've gotten that process started. I believe they may have done their submission already, or they're gearing up for it, and it might be this week. Then Andy and VJ, Brian, Andy, and myself are working on the RFQ for releasing that for some GC services. And we already have some scheduled dates in February for interviews with the selection to council on 6th. So while that's going on in the background, we will be getting picking up where we left off in spec design, down in that kind of lighter blue things that you can see. And we would be picking up with design development. And some of our other phases, you can probably go through this slide. I won't read all these to you.
Yeah.
Schematic design we already completed, so that was where we, we established the goals, created a preliminary schedule. We met with Andy and Andrew and the team and kind of identified the building program requirements. Came up with our cost estimate, we had a third-party cost estimate, we did the drawings, and then coordinated with the team. And then what we would be picking up later this month would be design development. So this phase, there's a lot of text here. This phase is really just at its core the design refinement phase. So we would be taking what we got in the initial from the initial construction estimate and putting that information in there. Also, you guys have provided us with some comments as well too, so we have those that we're going to pick up on and kind of go through some of that information. There's a lot more coordination with our consultants, and then obviously the CMGC contractor would be in on this phase, or the tail end of this phase. We would be doing some coordination too. Really, the goal at the end of this phase is to finalize our design. So we'll kind of be done designing at this point. And then that will put us into the next phase, which is construction documentation. So really what we're doing here is final coordination. We're kind of creating the blueprints, getting our permit drawings submitted, our final bid drawings to the contractor to bring in the subcontractors bid. And we're also doing written specifications for this phase as well too. So that's going to kind of put a bow on the design and documentation phase. There is going to be a bidding phase where the CMGC, they're getting bids from the subcontractors. That's the next phase after this one. We're going to primarily what we're doing in this phase is they're working with their subs, trying to get the lowest pricing, trying to get the best qualified subs. We're evaluating product and material substitutions, and then also any addenda. So anything that comes back, maybe from permit review, or if something's over budget, we can kind of work with them to like some of that stuff in this phase. And then the final phase is everyone's favorite, is when it actually is under construction. So we essentially take a back seat to this, and CMGC will kind of be the driver's side of the seat, but we'll be handling, providing any information they have on the drawings. We'll be giving them answers to that. There's a checks and balances with shop drawing and some submittal reviews. So we'll be doing a lot of that information as well too. Obviously, they're reviewing their pay applications. And then substantial final completion once the building's done. Go through the building, review, make sure everything's done to specs, and at that point it'll be complete. So, anything else I missed?
You didn't really miss, but we didn't have enough acronyms, so I want to throw one more acronym in there. But when you see this process change orders, unfortunately that kind of comes with any project, but one of the things we're trying to eliminate, one of the things you try to do with CMGC is lock in something called a GMP, which is guaranteed maximum price. And that's what the contractor during the CMGC interview process, they come forward and say, we've worked with subs, we're looking at materials, we're going to come in and we can do it for X. That's our GMP. And the intent is to hold them to that. And we haven't done this before, but I've seen and heard of projects elsewhere where the inflation of last year, I mean, contractors didn't like that, but they had to be held to the GMP. Now, I haven't looked at like the legal construction documents, so there may be, some nuance there, but anyway, that's what the guaranteed maximum price is meant to do. Is you got a change order later. Sorry, but we'd like you in on a GMP. Unless it was a very large extenuating circumstance, but that's not the goal. Is to try to eliminate these, processing change orders.
Yeah, and that's, that is something that the CMGC process can help with that, because they're kind of shopping these things out early on. They're forced to go through the drawings with a lot more detail versus a design bid build, where they're just trying to get a little bit in, and then there's a lot. We typically see a lot more change orders with that type of procurement process. But that's essentially what this whole thing is. Eliminates change orders and then actually reduces the spending as well.
Jason, okay, that was it. I've seen it. Yeah, so that's, the staff report, my recommendation, and then I wanted to get a little bit more of an overview to council, so you know what the phases would be and what the schedule would be as well.
Any questions? Councilor Page?
I was ready to make a motion. I appreciate the novel approach to this, no forcing. I like they were trying to do from the old way where there's all like it was a lot of overages, stuff, and then more damage. I appreciate the move to let's get this out. With that, move to adopt resolution 2215 to approve an agreement with Boston Architecture for public work facility full design.
Okay. We have a motion on the table by Councilor Page, seconded by Councilor Stephen. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carried.
Mayor, may I ask? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Lori noted she would like to have a roll call vote on this, please, if that's possible.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Councilor Page,
Yay.
Mayor Lenahan,
Yay.
Councilor Payton,
Yay.
Councilor Smith,
Yay.
Councilor Kindle,
Yes.
Councilor Martinez,
Yay.
Councilor Sheldon.
Yeah.
We have unanimous pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is our land use appeal. I'm just gonna get out here and out of the gate and say it's been a while since we've had a quasi judicial public hearing, de novo hearing. So we have a script. Bill will be reading some of the script, and I will jump in some of the script and we'll go through the Q&A and that sort of thing. Have time to discuss this, talk to the applicant, and so on and so forth. So bear with me. It's been several years since I've done a de novo hearing, so might be a little bumbly. I'll try not to, but we'll get through it. So can call the hearing to at 7:46.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. The public hearing on the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision on Greenville Mixed-Use Design Review, file number 22-114, is hereby called to order. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Presentation of staff report, followed by entry of additional correspondence received into the record, then questions by the City Council or staff. Opening the public hearing for testimony in the following order: applicants and proponents, then opponents, then rebuttal, if necessary by the applicant. Then closing of the public hearing, followed by no other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant unless a question is asked by the City Council. Questions of staff, if any, by the City Council, then discussion by the City Council and deliberation toward a decision. The City Council may make a decision at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain in the future. If the matter is reset to a time and date certain in the future, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. The substantive criteria that apply to this application are listed in the staff report. These are the criteria the hearing body must use in making its decisions. All testimony and evidence must be directed toward these criteria or other criteria in other land use regulations you believe apply to the decision. Any decision the City Council makes on this application must be based on these criteria. Despite the importance of other issues that may be raised during the public hearing, the City Council must make its decision based solely upon these criteria. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to allow the city council and others an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Also, failure to raise constitutional other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city council to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court.
All right, thank you, Bill. At this time, I ask the members of the city council to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. Does any member, at this time, is there any ex parte contact from any city councilor? Councilor Peterson? I would like to disclose that I attended the planning commission meeting on October 12th, 2022, as well as the planning commission meeting on January 11th, 2023. I would like to show that we didn't really come from. And I believe I can remain showing
I also was on the planning commission when this was discussed. The, having the, commercial. aspect. However, that being said, I'm on city council and, commission.
I have asked staff for clarifying questions regarding pertaining to the hearing, and that's it. But I still feel that I can participate in the hearing. Anyone else? Do any members of the audience wish to challenge any counselors in partiality? All right, let the record show that there's no one that is challenging any counselors in partiality. Next up would be then the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and City Councilors. Before I get going into my staff report, I just want to make a few clarifying comments. Since this is an appeal, in order to be able to participate tonight, you would have to have standing in the application. Through the course of the application process, nobody submitted any public comments into the record or participated in the hearings with the planning commission. So the only person that has standing on this application is the applicant. So you don't have to worry about anybody being in opposition or neutral or anything like that. We only have one party tonight. Regarding the process, instead of submitting anything into the record that came in last minute after my staff report, I'd like to do it now just to give you the information so you have time to look at it while I'm doing my staff report. At around 4 o'clock today, we did receive an email from Planning Commissioner Chair Stuart King, and he provided us with a letter. So I'll pass that around to you. We also emailed it to Councilor Cameron during the work session, so she also has a copy of it. And we'll also give a copy to the applicant.
And that's the only correspondence that we've received.
That is the only correspondence we've received on this matter. There's probably question as to whether or not a planning commissioner has standing on an application. We did run that past the city council because they were the decision maker. They generally don't have standing. And we do have our city council here, so you may want to ask them about the validity of this letter, whether or not it can be submitted into the record, since it came from a person who just doesn't have standing on this matter tonight.
So just for correction, city attorney, not city council. I mean,
SEL council, I guess. Yeah, I got what you were saying. Yeah.
Yes. So I would encourage you to ask that question of her to see if this is a letter that could be considered by you, something that was coming from a decision maker on this matter.
Okay. Do you mind if you take just a quick moment to read this?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'd like to ask, the question that you.
Yes, the question is for legal counsel, and the question is, does the city council have the right to accept the letter from the planning commission chair, who is a decision maker on the decision that's before you?
And I'm hoping you can provide some guidance on that for us.
Yeah, so it's my understanding based on the correspondence that it's intended to be not necessarily from the person in his capacity as the planning commission member, but rather as a member of the public. So from my perspective, the council can consider it as if it's testimony from a member of the public, and correspondence as though it is, from any other member of the public, and not as someone who was a decision maker below.
And that is a good point. That is, I agree, that's how it's being presented, but because there's the only person who is a party to this application is the applicant, since nobody else participated. Can somebody step out of their capacity as a planning commissioner chair and submit a letter into the record at this time for them to consider, since this person does not have standing in this matter?
So it's my understanding that, if you imagine a member of the public can come speak and testify to the appeal right now, that's the same status that this letter has.
So people without standing have a right to testify?
I believe that you are opening the appeal to public testimony. Is that not the plan tonight?
I guess my position was you would need to have standing to participate in the appeal.
Okay, I'm sorry, this is not my normal area. So if you just hold for 1 second, I'll review the rules and see whether we will be taking testimony tonight. I apologize.
And I just want to make sure the city's safe.
Thank you.
While she reviews the legality of it, I remember last time we had an appeal, is about adding 200 square feet to the front of the houses, taking away some of the fronts. It's in the front yard, which would build the price up per square foot. But we had to have a box of rules from the road list. Can you please list those rules so you know how to proceed?
We're going to
Last
get
time we were in a box, and we could decide to answer those.
Yeah, you mean tying to the criteria?
Right.
Yeah, we'll get there. I think we just wanted to get this procedural.
Yeah.
Emily, while you're looking that up, or Ashley, would we be able to continue with the staff report?
yes.
Yeah, okay. So Steve, do you want to do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. We, some points here and we'll get to some of those questions that folks are talking about. Whoops, sorry.
Thanks, Andy. So we are here tonight on an appeal of a planning commission decision regarding a mixed-use building in the Bryn Hill subdivision. And so, Andy, you can go to the next slide. And so we got here essentially through a process that involved the planning commission holding a work session back in April with the applicant and staff to discuss, the development of the mixed-use space. And, that was, done with a presentation by the applicant showing, the different variations, if you will, of how the building could be used, some of the complexities of meeting parking requirements, some of the other difficulties with, trying to make sure that the space is viable long-term as well. And again, as most of you know, I am new to the city. I did start here in September 22nd of 2022, so I was not at that meeting. I've done my best to gather all the available information from that meeting by looking at the minutes and talking with staff and talking with our consultant who was there. And so I feel like I've gotten a pretty good understanding of what happened there. And that really was just a work session that, provided some feedback to the applicant on what the planning commission was thinking for that space. So if you want to go to the next slide, Andy, these are the applicable review criteria for this particular appeal. Much of it is captured in the procedures ordinance for doing an appeal. We do have a section on appeals that is very specific on what you need to do to appeal. And then we have the neighborhood community zone development standards, which addresses the commercial area in the Britton Hill development. So those are really the criteria. I should slow down and back up a minute. The appeal in this situation is very specific. They are not appealing the entirety of the decision from the planning commission. They're only appealing the condition of approval that was imposed by the planning commission. And that condition of approval is tied to section 155.259 sub 2B. So that's why that's an applicable criteria for this review, since that is what the condition of approval is tied to. If you want to go to the next one, Andy. So this is the subdivision, the master plan for the whole project, and that area down there in white that says phase 1 is the area of the project identified for the master plan. For the mixed use area for the project. And so it is 2 acres as required by code. And that's what we're looking at today. If you want to go to the next one, Andy. This is showing you where that building, where the mixed use building would be located on that property. So it would be located at the south west corner. And it also shows you kind of the rest of the layout of that property as well. So the building that's at the northwest corner would be an apartment building. You would have all your parking for that building to the east side of it and to the south. And then you would have parking for the mixed use building, taking up the spaces directly adjacent to it and a little bit to the north as well. They would take over some of those spaces. And so the requirement was for roughly 100 parking spaces, and they're showing 109, which includes some of the on-street parking as well around the building. So the parking was very important to them for 2 reasons. One, they have learned that when you have high density housing, if you don't provide adequate parking, it's a deterrent for folks to want to come and rent those units, and also wanting to make sure that they would have enough space for whatever use decided to come in for the commercial use as well, because depending on the use, the standards could vary. And so I think it was well thought out to add as much parking as possible for the project. Next slide, Andy. This is again going through that parking with cars there, so you can just kind of see the on-street parking and how that would unfold, and then the parking in the spaces as well. One of the things they had to do was to get the aisle that's on the east side to be one way, so they could get a fire truck up the 2-way and then out of the parking there at the northeast corner. So there used to be a full movement parking lot, but we changed the area on the east to have a 1-way aisle to help with widening the aisle on the west, so the fire truck can go through. Next slide, maybe. So this slide is from the April 12th Planning Commission work session. This is the slide that shows the 4,700 square feet, which is the applicant's preference for the building. So the 4,700 square feet is shown in the red hash area. The gray area in the middle is the additional 4,000 square feet that the applicant has proposed in their application as being flex space. So the idea would be that it could develop out now as a residential, and then in the future, if the need was there for commercial, they would come in with a design review application and convert that over to commercial. It is staff's thought that that's not a good approach to this project. It would be better to determine what the right amount of commercial space is and cap it, and then let the rest of the space develop out as residential. It just seems unlikely that if you develop it as residential, you would convert it later back to commercial. So I think that's really what this exercise is tonight, is a way to try to find a balance on where to put the city's commercial zoned land in the city and what's the right amount for Bryn Hill in particular, in relationship to the city as a whole. And so I chose this slide. I want to make it clear to the record that your packet that you received included all the slides. It showed the 8,000 square feet. It showed all four of the different layouts that the applicant presented at the April 12th hearing. I just chose this one because this is what their proposal was for the October hearing. So if you want to go to the next one, Andy. So in this particular situation, I know it's called a neighborhood community zone, but this is really getting at neighborhood commercial space. You know, we're not talking about your general commercial that you're looking at along Glencoe, for example, or along Commercial Street. You're looking at a very unique type of commercial space that's going to be incorporated into a subdivision that has houses really on all four sides of it. And so it is a little unique in that regard. And so it does generally mean smaller in scale in terms of the uses. It does mean that, you know, you're going to get maybe when it says small grocery store there, it's more of like a specialty type convenience store. You've probably seen these at the coast where they have, in addition to your general stuff that you see at a convenience store, they have some higher end stuff. They might have wines, they might have some candles, they might have some arts and crafts, something like that, in addition to what you would find in your typical convenience store. And then again, your general specialty stores like that, goods and services, you know, you might find a specialty deli that has a coffee shop or something like that. But each neighborhood commercial zone, you know, has a list of permitted and commercial uses. Our neighborhood community zone is very limited on those. They're very broad categories. They don't get really down into the minutia. And so, you know, it is staff's idea that we would see uses in this particular commercial space that would be in line with the daycare, or potentially the coffee shop deli scenario, or a convenience store, maybe a tap house, that might be a stretch, and then maybe a variety store. And then some potential conditional uses could be a larger restaurant, a liquor store, or a laundromat or something along that lines. Highly unlikely, but again, our conditional uses in our neighborhood community zone are quite limited. And so I did a pretty broad read of it, and these potentially could be some uses that you would see out in that particular location. Next slide, Andy. And so I did a little bit of this for you in your staff report, but trying to break down kind of the general need for these uses. And so a childcare preschool is about 100 feet per student or per child. And so if we had 20 out there, you'd be looking at the 2,000 square feet. I think the idea is that it would be bigger, 40 or so, and it could capture the whole 4,700 square feet out there, would be the best case scenario. If it is smaller, then we would be looking at one of these other type of uses, potentially filling that additional space. And these just, again, you know, staff has done some research. And we've looked at other communities that are similar. We've looked online. We've relied heavily on our finance director, who did an extensive review for the EOA on commercial lands. Also provided a very detailed memo for the April 12th or April 14th Planning Commission meeting that I thought was really well done. I have included that in part of your packet. So I think if you read my staff report together with that memo, it really gives you a good overview of what staff is thinking for not just Bryn Hill, but the city as a whole. And that's really what we're trying to do with this exercise tonight, is try to strike a balance between where the commercially zoned properties are located in the city and what we don't want to have is vacant spaces. We don't want to put too much out there and then never get used. We feel if we have a little bit slightly lower number and it gets 100% used, 1,400 feet to the south, we're going to have commercial and Main Street. And there's a whole project going on right now looking at that area for the North Plains downtown improvement plan. Some of the thoughts coming out of that plan is some of those lands could be rezoned that aren't commercial right now to commercial, which would increase that base. We also have the the GOA project coming on board over there on Glencoe that would provide an anchor store with additional commercial spaces that's probably going to be highly attractive to investors. We also have the Roll Tide commercial spaces that have just come online. And so he has two 5,000 square foot buildings that were approved. Right now, he has one available with 5 spaces available in those buildings, in that one building. It's our understanding that he may have one tenant under contract at this time for a space in that current building, but that's all we've heard of at this time. And so the scenario we're trying to prevent is the situation down off of Northwest West Union in the Sunset West subdivision where we have 0.9 acres zone mixed use and it has sat. We have received phone calls on that property, but only to do apartments. Once we inform them that we have to include mixed use, we don't get any more phone calls for that property. One of the things we're hearing is that 0.9 acres could be too small. 2 acres could be too small to make some of these type of concepts viable. It could be, a larger acreage might be necessary to make this work. So, Andy, you want to go to the next slide? We are at a crucial moment here in North Plains. We want to provide a vibrant and prosperous downtown through these plans and through the UGB process that are currently being worked on right now, and see successful development at the GOA as well. And given the delicate nature of the city's downtown, to expand the downtown for commerce, we want to be careful in how we move around commercial land in the city. We don't want to, for example, put too much out in Bryn Hill that would make the downtown less viable. I think everybody would like to see the downtown become a very active place, particularly after 5 o'clock. We would have a little bit of a nightlife. There'd be people maybe going to a restaurant or some type of event could be occurring downtown. And so that's the balance that staff is looking at here. And so it's staff's opinion that at most the development at Bryn Hill should be limited to no more than 4,700 square feet. What that does, and I'll go back to the slide and show you, but if you look at the space that was identified for the 4,700 square feet, it takes up the whole west side of that building. So staff did err in my recommendation in the staff report at 4,500. That should have been 4,700 square feet, with the idea being that we would utilize that whole building. That whole west side of that building would be available for commercial, and then the rest would be the residential, and then the open space that's shown there as well, the indoor open space for some of those apartments. So the last slide, is it one more, Andy? It is staff's belief that the council should probably consider reversing that condition of approval and recommending a new condition of approval that it be capped at the 4,700 square feet, to not do the flex space idea, because it just doesn't seem like that would play out. And there's a lot of tracking and a lot of effort on staff's part to where are we at in the process? What do we have to do? Who's the current owner, or the ownership could change? And so for really simplicity, the flex space idea just does not seem realistic, that if we have it as residential, it will come back someday in the future as commercial. So last slide, Andy. So you, in your decision making tonight, have the ability to affirm the decision, reverse the decision, amend the decision, or remand it. However, in this situation, I would not recommend remand because we are tight on a 120-day clock. We did receive an extension from the applicant, so we could get here tonight, but we only have until February 23rd to issue a final decision. So I don't know if we could ask them for additional time at this point, so I'm not sure how the remand would work without having more time. But that concludes my presentation, and here's to answer any questions you may have. Before we answer questions, though, we might want to go back to legal counsel to see what their thought is on that letter.
Yeah, so according to the North Plains Municipal Code 155.033 sub E, the appeal to city council is de novo. However, it shall follow the same notification and hearing procedures as for the original planning commission hearing, and that includes taking public testimony. So I think that you should take public testimony tonight, and that correspondence should be included as public testimony.
All right, questions by city council? To staff? Could you define what is meant by flex space?
Flex being that it would be developed with one use today and flex to the other use should market demand show it's necessary. So it's gonna flex in terms of we're gonna construct it as residential today. But in 2 or 3 years, if all that 4,700 square feet gets utilized and we're getting pressure for more commercial space in this building, we will decommission those residential spaces and convert them into additional commercial space. So flex. And that's just not certain that
When
would
it
play
will
out.
occupy, that could be the challenging issues of those.
That's part of the thought process from staff is, the eviction of the tenants to get them out and then, is that really the process we would like to have? It seems a little challenging. And so that's really where staff's looking at this from is, the practicality of it all.
What happens if flex is eliminated? Does it then just become commercial space?
If the concept of flex space is eliminated, then I think, that's kind of the basis almost of the planning commission's condition of approval is to go with the flex space concept, go ahead, develop it out. But after 2 years, you may have to convert it depending on what is happening out there. And I just don't know if that's a good way to capture your land base. I think you're better off setting a number and letting it get developed and then working in other regions of the city to capture additional space, like along commercial through the UGB process. Every great city has multiple commercial spaces throughout their city. And so I really think as we go into the UGB process, you guys will be looking at that and trying to identify where are future needs for commercial space in the city. What is that number? What should we do with commercial street through the downtown improvement plan? Should we rezone some of these lands and get additional commercial? And again, one of the things I think that potentially the planning commission was contemplating is would investors invest in these areas? What's the likelihood? Is there any assurance that they would invest in these areas? And the answer is no. You can't just put 8,700 square feet out in Bryn Hill, and that's going to assure you that investors are going to go out there and develop it as commercial just because you put 8,700 square feet out there. Just like if you put rezone some of the properties down here on Commercial Street, there's no assurance that they're going to come tomorrow and knock a building down and redevelop it as a commercial use. It's a vision is what it is. And it's trying to market your city in a way that encourages investors to want to come and look at North Plains and get interested in it and get that energy going. And once you get that going, amazing things can happen. So we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. We think it makes good sense to spread it around. And that's what we're trying to determine tonight is what is the balance of commercial space for Bryn Hill.
I have a few more questions, but I don't want to hog the space. Do you mind if I ask a few more questions or are you okay with that? And they're more for clarifying questions for me. So I guess I was under the impression that there might have been a 5-year timeline on that space. And it's been reduced to 2 years.
Yeah.
My understanding. So what's that 2 years reduced? Where did that reduction, who presented that reduction? And was there a general consensus from PC to go for 2 years?
Yes, that's a really good question, and again, that really gets to the heart of the matter. Can you, first code real quick and pull up the NC one content? So in the code section that I referenced in my staff report as being the applicable code section for the NC zone, that section of the code has that 5-year duration in it. The language that is actually in the condition of approval came from that criteria. And what happened was there was a conversation, there was a discussion during the planning commission meeting about 5 years, 2 years, what's the right number of years. The applicant, and they can provide additional testimony on this, but the applicant was saying that, 5 years would be too long for them. It would, they don't really specialize in commercial development. They're more of a multifamily developer, but they're interested in taking on this project. And so they're inheriting a little bit of risk, but they felt that 5 years would be too much. The planning commission discussed that, and I can't recall who made the recommendation, but a 2 year from the 5 year to the 2 year was recommended. And there was general consensus from the planning commission on that. And then there was a motion to vote on that.
And then another clarifying question for me, it's my understanding that the NC zone, the way that our code is currently written, the NC zone, there's no basis or metrics for looking at this, if we're looking at this 2 acre spot for commercial, there's no metrics in our code, in the NC code, that says if you have 2 acres, you need X amount of commercial space.
That is correct.
Right?
The only spatial requirement in the code for the NC zone is the 2 acre standard. At least 2 acres need to be set aside in a master plan type of a project for the mixed use development to be able to go there. But it does not specify anywhere in the NC zone or throughout the code that there is a magic number for the commercial space.
And so the commercial space that was presented, that's actually presented in our packet, like that particular amount of space was suggested from the builder, the developer, and I'm trying to in my mind justify where did these numbers come from? I think these 4,700, 4,000, where did these numbers come from?
I'll share what I know, but I think that's a really good question for the applicant as well.
Okay.
And just in what's available to me through staff and through the minutes and whatnot, it's my understanding that this was the work session conversation. So they brought forward the layout that I shared with you there that showed the 2 buildings, that showed the building that they have identified for the mixed use space. And as you kind of read through the minutes and you look at the proposal, the underlying theme was that there's some limitations on how much we can bring in here because it is only 2 acres and we have parking requirements. And parking requirements seem to drive a lot of that discussion back in April about, getting that balance between the mixed uses, the commercial uses, and the residential. And at 4,700 square feet, they seem to be able to get both of those things to work well. As they started to keep going up in commercial space, it started presenting issues, and we're going to have to lose some housing to get more commercial space because we have to park it. And so, again, that's kind of the balancing act that is being asked of you tonight. More commercial, less residential, more residential, less commercial. And again, I think you need to really keep in mind that this is not the type of destination commercial that you would see along Glencoe. This is really neighborhood commercial, largely intended for the residents in that neighborhood. It's not to say that folks in Sunset Ridge wouldn't come over if there was a popular shop there or business. But largely it's considered that it would be walking, riding, not as much travel via in the vehicle because we have 500 units over there, and then we have another significant number of units to the south as well. So it is envisioned that it wouldn't be that drive-by type commercial. You might pick a golfer up every now and again coming back from Pumpkin Ridge because they have a convenience store there or something, but again, limited in its nature.
Thank you. Thanks for your vision. Okay.
Thanks. So when this is I was on a planning commission, this being discussed, and we were in negotiations with how many houses are there, and are there only two stories or a place where people that are older can actually, have a question house? Is that a condition of that? The purpose was to try to get, more businesses space. Because, we can say not space business, but where are they? So that was the idea, was to put a little spot where space feels powerful. The developer at the time said, well, listen, we don't really do commercial. The developer said that they don't really do commercial. That's something that's really profitable, and they're not, that's when they're selling it, they're not gonna really have a good market for that. So they said, how about we just do it for like 5 years, nothing's gonna fly. Well, 5 years, that's, we're gonna give it a shot. And now it's 2 years, and now it seems like it's being whittled away. So the spirit of it was to get more available spots, and being they had a timeline to it, they weren't married to it. But the resistance was the profitability of the changing hands. So they have it, they develop and sell it, right? They had the land that's going to be sold to, and the developers would buy it. They're going to sell to somebody else to build the houses, and they're going to sell to people, right? So that seems to be what it really was, right? The developers not really wanting to do commercial because they don't do commercial, but in the spirit of trying to meet the local needs, that's why we have that with the timeline. So that's kind of that from what I remember, and I'm doing it, so.
Any other questions from council to staff before we open public testimony?
We also have commercial Sunset Ridge. Is that what we do?
Just, I think if you pull it close or make sure it's on.
Yeah, I think you can pull it closer.
No.
Maybe.
The,
on.
Anyway, if we change timelines with Burn Hill, we're gonna have the same problem with Sunset Ridge. Because they have commercial, we're there. And we're gonna be consistent. That's one of my questions.
I don't understand the question.
Well, Sunset Ridge has commercial area that they've got it for sale. And I think the timeline there was 5 years too. So if we change this to 2, then automatically set a precedent where we have to change that one to 2.
That decision was done. That it was not appealed.
Okay.
Any other questions before I open up the?
I have comments, but I have no questions to proceed.
Okay. Sure, I'm doing this the proper way. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the public testimony at 8:28. And we will now take public testimony beginning with the applicant. So if you wish to speak, certainly come up to, you can either stand at the podium or go over to make the councilor sit, whichever you prefer. And if you would be so kind then just to state your name and address for the record.
Community mayor councilors, my name is Jesse Nemec with JT Smith Companies, and our office address is 5285 Gills Road. So yeah, this has been a bit of an ongoing process and probably some confusion between the planning commission and myself. We took a look at this property. We're the third prospective buyer, or maybe possibly even the fourth. Let's take a look at it. We're trying to make something happen here. We are primarily a residential developer, and we are going to bring some financially accessible housing for foundations. But that's a big part of what we do. We're seeing these big changes happening in this development market. Mortgage rates, the cost of housing is just going through the roof. And just making housing accessible for a lot of people. Meanwhile, going through that process, there's a code amendment requiring a commercial space of ground floor. And we thought long and hard about who we want to see with this development. 2 acres is big enough to have enough house to do true mixed use development, but it's good shot. Talking about builders and other prospective tenants, start to take a look at what's happening and changing retail wise in North Plains. And we thought, okay, well, let's come up with a model and see what works. That's how we came up with 47 per square feet. And in conjunction with modeling, it's all going to work. It's got to pass together. As you said earlier. And that amount of space and allowed density, the residential density work together. Just barely, but it does work. And only because North Plains has a code. It's a little bit of nuance, it's unusual, but it allows you to use 50% of the on-street parking to the property. That's the only reason that those required parking lots support the property. So have that. It's not mathematically possible. The density is allowed. So we attended a work session in the planning commission, and I presented 4 different options at various sizes and shapes to show how parking would work. And I know it wasn't very well received. The planning commission wanted more commercial. It's very, very evident. And some conversations were had about some independent studies that were done that cautioned that maybe more commercial can draw commercial away from the downtown core, which might not be a good thing. And perhaps it's just everything's too much, but from my perspective, standing here at this podium, the tone of the room changed. Once that discussion was had, and we started talking about items of the steps of the site plan, how it's going to work better. We should have an access directly drop over here. And I thought we made a big stride and like, okay, we move past commercial and we move forward with our application. And primarily, going back to the planning commission hearing, we're talking about time frames, 5 years versus 2 years. I made a statement that having 4,000 square feet, 8,700 square feet of commercial space sit vacant for 5 years is way too long. Like that would be financially devastating. And it's a large expense to get this project all built, and you need that revenue to pay back the loans to make it financially viable. And it's my big mistake that 5 years is too long. And the planning commission graciously offered to reduce it to 2 years. That was an appreciated concession on their part. Nonetheless, if we were to build out all that space as commercial and it's sat vacant for even 2 years, it's going to be in excess of $200,000 a year in lost revenue. Again, making the project not viable. We have some pretty specific concerns about the viability of that much commercial space in that area, given that it's not on the code, but it's served by the neighborhood that is surrounding. I've been talking to Dave Vanderhay, who's developed the whole time, and he actually doesn't have any leases signed right now as of today. Scout 1, he almost had signed up, but cost of tenant, it's too expensive right now. The inflation, the cost of materials, things like that, they can afford. So we're going to have to drive towards. It's got a lot of people interested, but it's quite some time. So it's a big investment in something like this. $1 million. We need it to work. Our owners and investors, banks require it to work. And so I'm here to take one last bite of the apple, and hopefully we can make something happen. We like North Plains, we've done other projects here, it's a great town. Like,
Any questions?
We already bought the property.
I think in the packet, it mentioned maybe at the planning commission that we provided examples of long-term vacancies in virgin commercial areas. And I was wondering if you could give us an example of that.
yeah, so Rudy Gadbug is the master planner. He also launched us, these galaxies in space, I don't remember correctly, it's not $12 square feet. We wrote a law that's still working, that's never released. And so they wanted to agree, that's a huge risk, and obviously there was much like project. So some of that, but it's still financial loss. We've seen a number of other buildings, around Portland. There's not enough mass, pedestrian mass and mass transit, things like that. And other commercial spaces that kind of feed on each other, that this type of thing, this mixed use idea sounds great, but it needs more mass. And I really think that 2 acres is not enough. I think the station works great. It's much bigger. There's a lot of places in downtown Portland where it looks great. It's obviously a really different situation.
Did you build in a radio station?
I, at the time when the organization was being developed, I worked as a civil engineer.
And have you said you've done some modeling? You know, I'm just curious about, have you done any kind of market studies? You said you've done some modeling, but also have you reached out just to see if there's any type of interest for your space? And if so, what kind of feedback have you received?
I've heard that we've got some people interested in brokers. I've heard who those people are yet. It's exact same for the past 6 months. And it has gone well. We'd love to start talking to people and figure out what does the space going to look like, how much space do we need. I have a follow-up meeting with Burke on Friday. I think he has somebody who might have a daycare situation. Could be interested. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to clarify is that, in our financial models, if the lease rates that we have seen around here are achieved, it's actually more profitable to build more commercial space. The problem is we don't believe in advance. That's why more commercial space won't work, because we don't build it with the honors.
Won't work now. Necessarily, that's your opinion, right?
Yeah,
That's not a fact, correct?
if it's not occupied.
It may be a fact today, but it's not a fact right now, correct? I'm not being argumentative, I'm just thinking, you're stating an opinion, you're giving an opinion, you're not stating a fact. You believe it.
It's a fact that if it stays empty, that zero revenues.
Yep.
However, that the market studies that we've done, there is absolutely demand for all the apartments. So if that space is residential, we have every confidence in the world that it will be occupied, paying rent, and work to pay back our loans. We don't have any confidence that it will be occupied. It's
Yes, I help you here. I see the project over there. Do you just own this commercial piece alone, or are you involved in the whole conglomerate over there?
We're under contract with our purchase of property. Once we get through our final engineering and development permits.
Okay,
Just for the 2.02 acres.
oh, you're just considered only interested in 2 point, okay. I'm just following you. So, excuse me, if I made them on our own, right? The property right now. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Councilor Martinez, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, online? Wishing to speak at this time? Okay. Guess I'm not having it. I'm having it. Bear with me, but we don't like it to do here, okay? If there's no opponents, no testimony, for the applicant, then, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public. At 8:40. More questions?
You have a list of the, decision.
You pretty much can rescind it, to affirm it. You can basically remand it, just on what's before us.
Really, it's your time for conversation, discussion about the topic, and if you get to a point where you want to make a recommendation, I'll do what I can to help you through that.
Your question I would have, if I may. So, if you want to approve it, you can deny it, or you have to rescind it, go back, put it the same thing. If I don't approve it, please, receive it tonight, so you can go back to the final commissioner, or that we back and find it.
No, I think that I mean, you can have a motion to rescind it, a motion to, approve, the denial.
So if I,
Deny it.
yeah, to clarify what a denial is, a denial of the request is essentially be upholding the planning commission's decision.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Would be
And-
the planning commission's decision is what it would be.
Yeah, if you deny their appeal, then the planning commission decision would be the final decision. And just to clarify for you, Councilor Page, because I'm not sure where your conversations are gonna go, I'm not quite sure where the criteria are gonna fall right now. I kind of want to hear what you have to discuss, and if you come up with a motion, then I can let you know what criteria it would be applicable to, if that's helpful.
Sorry, Cameron just asked to speak closer to me, or just?
No, that was earlier. You did it already. So will this be the part, are we going to comment and discuss now?
Yes.
Okay, can I go? So I appreciate everyone's, diligence in reviewing information, everything that was given. I am gonna stick with the planning commission on this one. I don't see a positive in right off the bat, just changing what's been the original plan. I think minimizing the commercial space would be foolish, really, in doing so. We have a deficit of that. We've been wanting more commercial space. This is like, as of today, we can't, I mean, I know we're planning for the future, but we can't just make this type of grand decision on that. Downtown is also one that, we need a lot of pieces of the puzzle before that's just like this booming evening night scene. And this is right off of Main Street. So this is going to be a large residential area. That commercial space, I think, is needed. And, they say, like with our development, the Glencoe opportunity, I think it's just going to bring more opportunity for commercial businesses to come in. And so, yeah, I'm going to stick by the Planning Commission's decision on this. I just don't see right off the bat. We've already kind of bent in multiple areas with this development, but in taking it from, 5 years to 2 years, I think it would be silly to just get rid of that in such a significant way. Like 4,700 square feet is that's not that much.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez.
Thank you.
Any other councilors have a comment or questions?
I think it's, we were trying really hard to get more businesses. That was kind of what we wanted to do. That area was, we were trying to get all commercial, but being that, developers are developing residents, had issues. That's why they fear city council, or the planning commission. And the concession was made already from 5 years to 2 years. I'll give them a chance to give it a shot and see what's going to happen. I mean, they have it after 2 years, they're going to do it the way they want to. So let's give it a shot and see if it works. I mean, this is really what we actually want to happen. I hate to see that go back just for, make it easier for profits, short term. So I'm on the side of just, stand.
Councilor Smith?
Well, I can understand their problem. They are a home builder, but at the same time, they came in knowing what was required. Now they want to change it. And they are getting a break from 5 to 2. I'm not sure. I think they knew what they were getting into, is basically what I'm saying. When they bought the property, and they looked at it. If they couldn't do it, I'm not sure why they agreed to it.
Can you revisit what allowable commercial businesses can be in this NC zone? I'm trying to think back to that slide and just thinking daycare, dry cleaner.
For example, one of the uses that's allowed, that's permitted in the NC is neighborhood commercial. Right, that's what it says. It says permitted uses, neighborhood commercial. And that's it. There's no definition. So that's why I went on and started identifying neighborhood commercial type uses for you, which is the smaller convenience store, the daycare, potentially a coffee deli, specialty type shop, or maybe maybe a restaurant, tap house, something like that. However, here there, but where they have a bunch of taps and it's a lively environment. That is some of the problems we have with our code right now, is it doesn't really lay out the uses quite that distinctly. And it really is a broad category for staff to make interpretations on. So that's how I came up with those particular uses. And as a conditional use, it says any permitted use in the light industrial zone is a conditional use in that zone. Well, those are some pretty intense uses in that area. So maybe that's something that comes through a UGB process. We take a second look at that. Again, he's kind of sharing with you that it would be challenging to get the spaces filled right now. So, if it is left open for an extended period of time, you might have a new code at that time.
Thank you. And I think for me, I absolutely see both sides to this. And I want to thank the planning commission for trying to keep the integrity of commercial space really at the forefront of what we're doing in our town. I think about the next 2 years and what that might look like for the economy. Session is all of this for nothing. And then I also think about some of the other projects in town, thinking about the rental opportunity area and, you know, proposed tenants in that area might fall in spaces that, you know, this would be known for. And so I just think about what are the next 2 years, what does that timeline look like, right? Like if we uphold the planning commission decision, and it's 2 years from what's the time, when does the clock start ticking? 2 years?
It would be 2 years from the time that the decision becomes final. So, yeah, so for example, for this, it's kind of twofold, you know, once the decision becomes final, they have a decision now that they can operate under. But if you look at that, it's two years from the last occupancy permit, I believe, for the residential. That's when the 2 years actually kicks in.
Of phase one, in that phase, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, so
phase
that,
one.
yes, of phase one, exactly. Thank you. So, you know, it's a bit of an unknown, right? Because we don't know how fast they're gonna build out phase one. But once phase one is built out, once you issue the last occupancy permit for that final structure in phase one, then the 2 year window for this space.
So just to piggyback on that, just for clarification, phase one has 160 homes.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
Okay, so it's 160 units in phase one. The units that are being proposed in this commercial, in this mixed use area, are they included in the 160?
That's correct.
Okay.
So it'd be all the residential units, including these apartment units. They would all have to get an occupancy permit, which doesn't mean that there's someone living in it. It just means that it's available now for somebody to live in it, that they've met all their code requirements. They build it to code.
Then, just one more follow-up question to make sure I'm really crystal clear. The space that we're talking about has been purchased, is under contract.
It's not been purchased, it's under contract to be purchased.
Speculation.
So if this were not a favorable outcome for the appeal, potentially another developer could offer, make an offer on that property.
I will, if, and I'm gonna speak broadly. Should something happen tonight that results in a decision that is not going to work out for this particular developer, it's likely that they would walk away from the project and the property would sit just like the property down in Sunset Ridge West. That is a potential scenario that, you know, they say, based on his testimony, that's what I heard, that there's carrying costs associated with holding this property available for that use. And it could preclude their ability to carry it. And that would be the decision they would have to make based upon whatever outcome they get from the city council tonight. And I don't know what that decision would be, but one possible scenario would be that they decide not to do the project. But that could be a possible outcome.
Well, before that is the field.
Pardon?
So opportunity cost, not so much of a concern.
Yeah, and I would just want to say, as much as it's a carrying cost for them, it's a carrying cost for Lennar to currently hold it. So that's 2 acres that they would likely want to market and sell as well. The unknown is, can they do it? We just don't know. But if, you know, they would continue to try to market it because that is still the code. It's 2 acres, mixed use, some other development opportunity down the road, but we just don't know what that would look like, but it would still be marketable.
And let's just say that scenario happened. And a developer comes in, looks interested in this 2 acre parcel. The planning commission would go through the same process and would be able to set the same parameters going forward.
We would have a new proposal and, you know, this is all speculation, right? And kind of hypothetical. So, you know, Yes, but if this person were to walk away from developing the property, Lennar still owns it. I'm sure they would still market it, and Lennar generally did not build multifamily housing. That's probably why they're marketing it. And you know, you see where it falls, and then a new developer would come in. We go back to planning commission, have a work session, and come back before planning commission to have a design review and conditional use permit application, and then another round of approvals or whatever the case may be.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions? So we have,
So where do we go from here now?
the city council needs to make a decision on how to move forward with this, the deal. And what I was just trying to do is trying to find my piece in my,
So there is a slide there that's had the decisions.
Should we go back there?
yeah, I think staff, maybe you might have quicker find than me. That would be
There we
great.
go.
Here you go.
Thank you.
I'm putting it up,
Yeah.
putting it up for all to see.
Thank you.
What's the solution, council?
I'm gonna move that for consideration of 22114, that we affirm the decision of the planning commission.
I'll say that.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Councilor Sheldon, second was Councilor Sage. All right, any discussion? You know, I think one of the discussion points that I had, that moving forward and trying to learn from this is that when the NC zone, I know, you know, from the beginning, the NC zone has provided a little heartburn from the beginning for various reasons that I do remember. So, and moving forward, is there a way for the planning commission to take a deep dive look on that NC zone and really get a, the reason I'm asking is, in my mind, during this whole process, one of the things that I guess I had a little hiccup and heartburn about was the fact that there was no metrics. There was no metrics for deciding how much commercial space, you know, should be in an NC zone. Like there's no formula, no calculation or anything like that. And if I'm thinking this through, right, and maybe you can tell me if I'm way off base, but you know, if we are moving forward and if we one day have a UGB expansion to look at, we've got all this new land, you know, to then plan to bring it forward. You know, I'm just wondering, do we need to clean this up, you know, and rewrite this NC zone or just update it in some way, shape, or form? So that's just discussion point. But I definitely wanted to get it on the record that it's caused me some heartburn, and I'm sure that it's caused others heartburn as well.
I'll just make one comment. I'll just make one comment to that. The good news is you have no land in the city right now that's undeveloped that's on NC. right? That's the good news. You're not gonna get in this situation anytime soon. The other good news is you're doing the UGB expansion. I think there's gonna be some recommendations through that process that discuss your zoning code with you, that will make recommendations on how some of these lands should be zoned, and maybe some recommendations on tweaks that should be made to potential existing zoning districts. And so, yes, is the answer to your question. I think those will be the processes that will probably help identify what the need is and where we should look at, making amendments to the code. And we don't have any land right now that can be developed. So we're not going to put ourselves in a situation like this anytime soon. It's only after we adopt the UGB expansion could this potentially fall out. So I think we're going to get it addressed. I know it's an issue for the planning commission. And I really think that we're going to get a very dynamic proposal on that UGB expansion that talks about some of the other zoning code as well.
Great. And I also want to praise staff and lift you up, because I understand that this has not been a good, this has been a really challenging exercise for a lot of folks. And I appreciate the time and the energy and the research that you all have put into this process to drive, and I know at the end of my day, I really feel like that you've had the best interest of the city in heart. You tried your best to do the right thing and provide us with clarity and information and research as just possible. So I want to commend you, and I want to thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any other discussion?
I don't know how much man hours and expense on these challenges for this. It went from the negotiation to get it down to 5 years, then challenging to get it down to 2 years, and this probably going to save a lot of money and people's time to research this. So to mirror what Terry said, having something that's a little more robust probably saves a lot of time and money.
Well, you're very lucky that you have a great finance director who has invested a lot of time and energy into doing this. And I'm the beneficiary of all of his hard work, and it's helped me get up to speed so I can actually speak intelligently to it tonight. So he deserves a lot of credit.
All right, any other discussion? All right, we have a motion on the table by Councilor Sheldon, seconded by Councilor Page. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you.
You need to go through the roll call. No, okay.
All right. Back to our agenda. Let's see, nothing for new business, nothing showing for unfinished business. City manager report.
Thanks for being here. I just want to reiterate, regarding the levy especially, thanks for the frank conversations the last week or so. Very helpful. Especially when we have a big decision to make, it's good to get everyone's kind of feedback and perspectives one-on-one. So that's great and helps to make better decisions. Other than that, we found a septic tank out here yesterday, so we'll be dealing with that this week, kind of figuring out the path forward, and what we have to do with that. Can't say it's completely unexpected that some remnants of the old building wouldn't be found, but so we started digging into that, literally, I guess, but figuring that out. Otherwise, that's sort of really been the only other. They found a big chunk of concrete that we originally thought was septic a few months ago. That's really been the only surprises in this project out here. But regardless, waiting on one part for the equipment, and we'll start putting those pieces all back together. But we're still expecting completion in February. And then
Check and make sure there's gonna be a light out there.
right, yeah. Well, PGE, there are certain aspects they haven't even approved yet.
Oh.
Yeah. PGE is almost on the same time frame as some of the other agencies but yeah, there should be 3 new lights out there, but I'll take a look afterwards. Yeah. And then there was that talk about grand opening this weekend, and hopefully there can be another grand opening for the building behind that sometime in the next couple months. I think he's running some issues, but any questions with the report or other things that's in, you know?
Grand opening, it's always like this, it's affecting large cities. Anybody has anything wanted to have cut rivers of our city, but you know. I need to.
Yeah, chamber, yep, yep. Did that for the trail project,
Yeah.
yep. Yep.
Councilor Martinez, do you have any questions for Andy, Bill, or Steve?
No, I appreciate Andy's Friday updates, though. I really like those. I feel like it then makes this part go even smoother.
That's the hope.
Thank you. Council reports. Councilor David.
No significant reports. I just wanted to clarify on the exhibition schedule. It says that I am exhibition for the planning commission. However, on the color-coded charts, it doesn't count for Sheldon. I just wanted to clarify. I did attend the planning commission meeting last month at Black Officio. Or last week, I'm sorry. Lots of discussion regarding signage. And so, so I just want to clarify that I think we are still able to stick to the original schedule on social media.
And for 2023. What am I missing? I'm.
So on, in our packet under February 2023, and it has a chart of all of the ex officio meetings. It says that I'm the primary for the planning commission meeting on 2/8. However, if you go to the next page, it has the city council meeting schedule and all the board and commission meetings that's color coded.
Oh.
It's actually your name. I just wanted to clarify that you were.
Yeah, I'm set. Those are the foregone conclusion, unless something comes up at the last minute. I'm not sure why it's listed in the February listing on page 1, but page 2 is correct.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And then my other comment, and I know Lori is not here, I just wanted to clarify the Washington County Office of Community Development. I am still the primary. It was the Washington County Coordinating Committee that I was trying to fill a vacancy for the alternate. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for bringing that up. I saw that as well. So we do still need an alternate for the Washington County Coordinating Committee for me.
Correct. That's the primary. Yeah, and I'm still on the panel.
So if you would like to be an alternate, would be great. So you guys think about it or reach out to me and I'll chat with you about what your responsibilities would be.
I have them on.
Yes, okay.
We'll talk about it. Absolutely. We can have a discussion.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That thing,
You just have to show up and buy it all.
Right on. I have my son join the Cub Scouts, and one of the requirements for some Scouts is talk to an elected official. They ask the money, okay. And it's fun. I think it's time to talk to the Cub Scouts. If anybody here wants to do that kind of stuff, it is a lot of fun. Sometimes they have cookies. If you guys want to do that kind of stuff, I will push them onto the list. You just what you thought. You might scare the kids though. They asked me, what do you see happening with them? Not much. Next.
Any other councilor reports? Councilor Martinez.
Yeah, actually, can I clarify too? Because I had that I'm doing library board tomorrow, but then the schedule has you, Mayor Lenahan. So is that correct? That's what's in the agenda? I don't know why I had myself down for the 18th for some reason.
Would you be willing to do that by any chance?
Yeah, do you want to just switch library
Yeah,
boards? You can do March and I'll do tomorrow.
that would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Any other, Councilor Smith?
I attended the Grenfell Parks meetings last week. They can't get up the idea of this purple park. Anyway, we were starting to bring up bands, and the Candy's reported the 60th anniversary this year. I had, I'm sure, but for the ice cream social, I was thinking, can we look into getting the 60th thing yet? That's some idea that we could do instead of, I think for the last 6 years I've been ice cream social. I think there's another band there, but nobody goes over here, as far as I know, to listen to it. But we had some kind of 60s band that we put together. I don't Beatles. Huh? How many Beatles got? Yeah, Johnny Limbo and the Ronettes. I know that's expensive.
You should be 70.
Well, they played up at Lake Merwin where I'm at. I think they gave us a break up there. I'm not sure what the cost is. I'm not sure like that. They said they got a break. I'm not sure if you want to try to push for something really nice like that and advertise it. I don't know. Just bring it up to conversation. I think it'd be nice to have a 60 man.
I think Patty Burns, is also, part of that conversation. I know that the, NPDA, we had a conversation about that, at our meeting.
Yeah, talk about what?
Yeah. The 900,000 per, yeah.
We had a discussion on the Ghost Creek Trail. And I know the last time we brought this up, we had a meeting on it. There was concern about the neighbors that back up to proposed path. Anything more conversations on that?
It's the McKay Creek Trail. Yeah, yeah. I haven't made any progress on that in the last year and a half or so. Just been focusing on other projects in the bond, transportation bond pathways.
But it came up.
And just one comment on that. We did hold a public meeting for that, a neighborhood meeting, and it was a Zoom meeting. And I sat on that call for 15 minutes and no one jumped on that call.
Well, we're conflating two things.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Ghost Creek.
Right, no, he was,
Sorry.
yeah, it messed up the name.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's okay. It's
Sorry,
okay.
my bad.
Yeah, McKay Creek, no.
Anybody else have anything to say?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and close our meeting and at 9:12.